What's your full name?
Mary Langston Boyles.
And what's your birth date?
April the 2nd, 1916.
All right. You're 105 years old.
Yes.
Just recently, a month ago.
In April, I turned 105.
Yeah, what did you do for your birthday?
I can't remember, but there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
I have lots of children, and if they just each one calls, that's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that means a lot to me too.
I have 6 living children.
Yeah. How many grandchildren?
7
Great-grandchildren?
great
Yeah.
grandchildren.
And where were you born?
I was born in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil.
Oh, wow. That's
My
interesting.
parents were Americans, and they were missionaries
Yeah.
to Brazil.
Fabulous. And how long did you stay in Rio?
Off and on, I lived there until I was 15 years old.
Okay. How did you like it there?
Oh, I loved it. I loved it.
What did you like the most?
It was my country.
Yeah.
At that time,
Yeah,
it was my country. But I came to the States and went through schools and ended up in nursing school and I was registered as a nurse in Virginia.
Yeah.
And from then on, I was mostly all American.
Yeah.
I loved the Brazilian people.
Were your parents still in Brazil?
They're dead.
I mean, at that time, were they still?
They were, yes, back and forth.
Okay.
Yes, but primarily they were back in Brazil.
I got you.
Yes.
And then, where were you when, I guess you were already a nurse when the war broke out, right?
Yes. I was registered in the state of Virginia.
Okay. Tell me what you did when the Second World War started.
My first station was Fort Bragg, North Carolina,
Yeah.
and I was sent there.
So you
I was called in nursing school. We was asked which we'd prefer if we needed to change. Would we be Army or Navy?
Mm-hmm.
And I was just jokingly said, Army. And I'm glad I did.
So, can you walk me through where you went from there?
Oh, me. From Fort Bragg, I was, I don't know how to say it, united, but I was put into the 55th Station Hospital.
Okay.
That was my assignment. And when we shipped out from Fort Bragg, we went to New York and took a ship,
Mm-hmm.
the Barenquin, if you can remember that. And it was a small little vessel. It took us 10 days to go between New York to over to the banks in at Merle's El Kabir, yes. The eastern part
Yeah.
of well,
Is
it
this
was,
North Africa?
yes, that was, yeah, North Africa would be good enough, be close enough. Then we depart from the ship, loaded on trucks.
Yeah.
We always traveled by trucks. Our luxury liners. 2.5-ton trucks.
Yeah.
And I was a little short, kind of short-legged. Had troubles always getting in and out of the truck.
Well, I'm sure somebody would help you.
Well, we helped each other. We'd give each other a boost. Yeah, we made it. We always looked after each other.
How many nurses and doctors were in your group? Do you remember?
We had 30 nurses all told.
Okay.
So that's, but we had to take care of large numbers of patients.
And you were in North Africa.
I was sent from the coast, I was sent up to a place called what eventually became known as Goat Hill.
Yeah.
And Goat Hill was so named because the general came up to inspect the nurses that had been sent there, and we'd camped out. We'd set up our tents and dug our foxholes,
Yeah.
and the general came up to inspect. And he walked up and he took one look and he got back in his car and went back down to civilization. And he announced that was not fit for goats and especially for American women. And we moved from there. We moved to a village called Carawan. Now you know about Carawan because of the rugs.
Oh, yeah?
Beautiful, beautiful rugs, hand-woven rugs. The women did the work always, and the native women.
Yeah.
So that was, and we stayed there. That little setup was awkward, at times very awkward, because it had been a small, actually almost a church, almost.
Mm-hmm.
But the French had gone across and bombed it before we had been sent there. And that was full of holes, the building was. And so the engineer department came up, I don't know where they came from, but they showed up. And they just laid boards down over the big gaps in the floors of that small building.
Yeah.
And we walked on those. We pushed anything that had to be moved. We moved on those planks. Those are old planks.
Yeah.
When we took patients to the operating room, we very carefully had one little. We put them on that and walk across the boards with them on that. And then when we would have so many at one time that we'd have to line them up to get into surgery because we had few surgeons. Our little outfit didn't. So we'd have to line them up, get them lined up to first come, first served. The doctors took care of that. And
Right.
our one nurse was an anesthetist, and she was worked almost to pieces. She was almost worn out because she had to do so much of it. Yeah. So, but
I'm sure you all put in a lot of hours.
the mission for our small hospital unit was to prepare the injured to move them down to larger medical establishments, American hospitals,
Yes, ma'am.
but we had to kind of patch them up the best we could to move them.
Yeah.
You didn't want to move your men all battered up.
Right.
And so we did the best we could at giving them good substantial care for them to be moved to a larger hospital further down, closer to the coast,
Yeah.
not sitting up close to Goat Hill anymore. Goat Hill was dirty. It was dirty. It had nothing up there but just little scrubby stuff.
Yeah.
It just was like desert.
So your team being pretty much close to the front line, you saved a lot of men.
Yeah, we went from there. We ended up in Italy, and Florence, Italy, and that was beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, it's such a beautiful city. And we had a beautiful setup, a nice setup, and we were so happy. But then we moved up. We always moved, our little unit always moved just a short distance behind the troops
Right.
because we picked them up early.
Yeah.
And we got up close to Pisa, the Leaning Tower.
That's right.
Well, the Germans had encamped in the tower.
Oh, really?
And they would use the windows in the tower and shoot out at the American troops that were trying to advance. And that's how we got a lot of our patients. Serious patients. So many head injuries and back injuries. And that's what was the type of work that I had done at Fort Bragg. So I soon was doing a lot of it up there at Pisa, just outside of Pisa.
Okay.
It was
How
heavy.
long,
It was heavy work.
how long were you there? Do you remember?
At Pisa,
Yes, ma'am.
I can't remember exact time, no, but we were there for several months.
Okay.
Yes. We had, would, part of it, I remember one section that I was head nurse of that section. And it was a long, long hallway with cots on either side, you know. And that's where we had our patient. And every once in a while we'd get one that had been hit in the head and it would be a little bomb. And we'd have our hands full trying to take care of the balmy one.
Yeah.
Bless her heart. And all we could think of was, what does your mother think? What will she think when she sees you now? The way we saw them, we didn't want her to see them.
Wow.
But that we were doing the best we could.
How did it make you feel seeing all these guys coming through your hospital unit?
They were patients. That's what they were. They were patients. That was it. You took care of them. At one time, I had Brazilians, Italians, American, German, all in my ward at one time. They were patients, regardless.
Right.
No. An Englishman. Yeah. I distinctly remember one young Englishman that had gotten him ready to ship back out, to ship down to get the ship to go back to England.
Yeah.
And he was emotionally just completely distraught because he said, I have nothing to take back to my queen. And I had to just kneel down by his cot and talk to him seriously about what he had to give back and what he had already given to his queen.
Do you remember what you said?
Remember what I said
Yeah.
that many years ago? Whatever I said earnestly.
I'm sure it helped.
Calmed him.
Yeah.
Didn't make him happy. He was carrying too much of a burden to be happy. He was too shot up.
And
Now,
that's
what else do you want to know?
That's just one example, I'm sure, of many, many that you had there.
Yes.
Can you think of any others that stand out to you?
Oh, there was so many, and we were shifting, getting patients ready to move and try to take care of them. And one time, and this was when Sicily, when they invaded Sicily, we went over.
Yeah.
Our planes flew over.
Right.
And they flew across our little hospital.
Yeah.
And we knew all those fellows, those pilots and everything. And so it was hard to, because we knew where they were going.
Yeah.
We knew what might be facing them, And they went, and in a short period of time, we received a message to be prepared that our small unit would take care of 144 men at one time. Truck after truck after truck. And we had to take care of them.
Yeah.
And so that was... And before, when we got the message, we didn't have bed space for all that. So we got out, and they said, well, you don't have much time, you got to get going. And we had to set up the big ward tents, like circus tents, great big tents.
Yeah.
The nurses had to set them up to get it ready. Well, you did what you had to do.
That's the common theme that I hear from all the veterans.
You do what you have to do. And while I was up there close to Pisa one night, I was on night duty. Well, that was night duty, meant an open field. And I would go from the big tents from one to the other, making my round. And I had made my round and I'd gotten on out when I heard a very familiar sound that was commonly called Bed Check Charlie.
Yeah.
And Bed Check Charlie was a German, and it was coming across trying to find out how many German prisoners did we have in our tents. And I was standing out in the middle of the field because I had just finished counting my heads.
Yeah.
I was standing out in the field when I heard Bed Check coming. And I just stood there. And as Bed Check Charlie went over the area where I was, Bed Check dropped a flare.
Mm-hmm.
And I stood in that bright light all alone. That's one time I never had fear. Because while I stood in that light, I knew that God was with me.
I could just picture that in my mind.
So,
Wow.
well, don't you think that's about enough? That's made a page for you.
Well, I honestly don't know exactly what to ask you, but hearing your stories is just wonderful. And you tell them so well. Where did you go after Italy?
After Italy,
Yes.
came back to the States,
Okay.
and then I was at what is that little North Carolina town that I went up in the mountains?
Swananoa.
Yeah,
Swananoa.
yeah, we went. Several of us got shipped to that place, and we had to look after whoever they brought in there, and they were all up and about and doing pretty well, but
Yeah.
we went and took care of that. And then from there, I was sent back to Bragg to go through the process of being separated from service.
Right.
I never was, I never did retire or any of that stuff. They separated the nurses from service.
Uh-huh.
So we got separated.
Swannanoa is outside of Asheville, which has a very large VA hospital to this day.
Okay. And
In the meantime, after I got back here, I married their daddy.
yeah, what was his name?
His name was Colonel S. Julian Boyles,
And
chemical man.
chemical? What does that mean?
Chemical Corps.
Oh, okay.
What?
Chemical Corps.
Yeah.
Okay.
In service, he was in the 91st Infantry in Italy and so forth.
Okay.
And he was the chemical officer.
When did you meet him?
I met him. We were sent to Sorrento,
Yeah.
which is a very, very special holiday spot
Yeah.
in Italy. And we were sent there. But they didn't give you a bunch of transportation money or anything. You didn't have that. So we caught a ride. We were given orders to go. And we were caught a ride to Naples. And in Naples, we caught a ride. It was a horse-drawn thing of some kind. Wasn't much. In fact, we started out, and the poor old horse gave out in the road. So we got out and started walking to this hotel where we were supposed to be staying. And Ruth was a tall girl from Iowa, big tall girl. And I was a stumpy little thing. And so we started walking, and Ruth said, I don't think I want to walk much more of this. I said, well, we're not going to get it if we don't. And I said, here, stand out here for a minute and stick your thumb out. That's what we used to do at home. And we did that. Both of us stood there with our thumb stuck out. And a weapons carrier, American weapons carrier with soldiers, happened to go by. So they stopped and picked us up, carried us up to the door of the hotel where we were supposed to stay. And I met Julian at that, we called it R&R, Rest and Recuperation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it love at first sight?
I don't know. Oh.
But you stayed in touch.
Oh, yes, right along. And then my brother was also in the medical, but he was in the Louisiana State unit. And and when he heard that he was already overseas when I got there overseas. I got in the Army before he did, but he got overseas before I did.
Okay.
Anyway, it was when Barry was hit, and he heard about it from, and he thought, well, I suppose that went Sis. I don't know what's happened to Sis. Because we had a first cousin that was already a patient in his hospital. And he said, I don't know what might have happened to Sis. So one afternoon when he was off, he went to the it was just like a club for there. And he went there asking.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened that I was going down the street heading to the same place to ask if anybody knew about him. And I looked down the street and I thought, oh. And there was my brother walking up the street, and he'd grown a mustache.
But you still recognize him.
Oh. And the first thing I said to, get that thing off your face before you go back home. Helen won't have you looking like that.
He was a surgeon.
That was his uncle. Yes, we all loved him very much.
That's where Thomas came from.
He turned out to be one of the top chest surgeons of the United States.
Is that right?
They go to Chicago and they got a whole wing named after him up there. Whole building.
What's his name?
Hiram T. Langston.
I could listen to you all day long.
Well, that's kind of you.
But I won't keep you all day long. Some of the other nurses you served with, any good stories about them?
Well,
Or
no,
anybody?
we were all in a small unit. We stuck together and we looked after each other.
So you got to know each other pretty well.
What?
You got to know each other pretty well.
Pretty close. Yes. And the last I saw of any of them was one time when I was married and had several of these, and and she had married. And her husband had moved to Fort Bragg, and so I went over to see her when I found out she was there. That was the last I saw her. But I corresponded with her for quite a few months after that, when she had to go and live in a nursing home. Evelyn Crowell had to live in a nursing home in Virginia.
Okay. Now my wife asked me to ask you something.
All right.
And when I told her that I was going to be meeting a lady who's 105, she said, ask her what her secret is to living a long life.
The secret of living a long life,
Yeah,
stay busy.
that's good advice. I'm sure.
Well, I've stayed busy.
Yes, you have.
Yeah. Stay busy.
How long were you a nurse?
How long?
Yes, ma'am.
Ooh, I nursed. I don't remember when I actually stopped nursing.
Did you ever?
I don't suppose I've ever stopped. Somebody had a bump or a bruise or something that had to be cared for.
Yeah, she had the time of service, and then she had us, and then when we got old enough, back in she went,
Yeah.
taking care of, injured children, mentally injured children. So,
Do you have any advice for younger generations?
They all have to have faith. And they all have to stick with their faith.
Yeah.
And if they live by their love of the Lord, they'll make it. You'll make it.
I agree.
He takes you. He takes care of you.
Yeah.
If you're standing out in the field or wherever.